Welcome to the You Triumph podcast, where we explore the triumphs and tribulations of extraordinary leaders from diverse backgrounds. I'm your host, Trevor Sterling, and across the podcast, I hope to inspire success by highlighting that irrespective of social background or personal characteristics, with fair opportunity and the appropriate mindset, ultimately anyone can be successful. From incredible achievements to key life lessons learned, the goal is to shed insights into the mindset, motivations, and stories behind the success, because you triumph if you believe. Welcome to this You Triumph Breakthrough Series podcast. Today is a special day because of the very special guest that I have. In 2021, I made history becoming the first black senior partner in a top 100 UK law firm. So I'm acutely aware, being that I'm only one of 90 black partners in this country, how difficult it can be to break through. During my recent years, I've spent a lot of time listening to the experiences of others, whether it be young people who tell me that they feel they can only be what they can see, or more senior people who tell me that it has been really difficult for them to break through. But every now and again you come across somebody who's not just broken through, they've broken through and then some. What they have done in their careers has been absolutely remarkable, but they've also committed so much time to giving back. And so today I'm delighted to speak to one such person, and that is Martin P. Griffiths, trauma surgeon at Royal London. Martin, welcome to You Triumph. Thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Trevor. How are you doing, mate?
I'm very well. Now, I'm going to declare an interest here. Martin and I are good friends. We go back a while, but actually it's interesting how we met, because I think we were both giving talks at St George's Hospital in southwest London. And I listened to you and saw you. And the one thing that was going through my mind, I'm scared to ask what was going through your mind when you saw me, because I gave a talk as well. But what was going through my mind when I saw you was, wow, a black trauma surgeon, a trauma surgeon from my background, that is incredible. And I often feel alone in the legal world, but it was incredible to see you. And here we are, lawyer, trauma surgeon, together. So really pleased to be speaking to you.
Oh, absolute pleasure, mate. It's always good to meet people who are smashing it in other careers, and you're very modest in your own achievements. And I think like people like us are part of a small but emerging group of people of colour who are doing things the right way for the right people. And I think I'm always willing and passionate to communicate with people about how we can do these things better and share that message. So it's an absolute joy to be here, mate.
Brilliant. So we're going to follow a ladder framework. My saying is, don't just aspire to climb the ladder, aspire to be the ladder. So we're going to pretend we're on a ladder. We're going to start with the top rung, which is for you to tell us where you are now. What is success? What does that look like? And then we're going to go to the bottom of the ladder, where it all started, middle of the ladder, challenges you face. So top rung of the ladder, what is your position, Martin? What position do you hold?
Right, here's a problem. I've got a lot of hats here, Trevor. Okay, fine. So my clinical role is as a consultant trauma surgeon at the Royal London in Whitechapel, and I was a lead for trauma surgery in the past. I don't do that so much now. I'm also, I have a role in advanced reduction in NHS England and NHS London. I'm the clinical director for NHS London Advanced Reduction Network and the national clinical director for NHS England, and I was the first person appointed to that role. I'm also I'm a deputy lieutenant of Greater London. I work with the Lord Lieutenant supporting the monarch and their activities within the London community. And I'm a trustee of a number of charities, including Charlton Athletic, and an ambassador to obviously Mercy Cole Trust, and a patron of St Giles's Trust, another great charity that work within the prison community to do work with, as those people emerge from that secure estate. I'm also a bit of an activist, yeah, and also a parent to two fantastic boys who I adopted when they were 3, and they're lovely and monsters. So apart from that, I'm pretty quiet.
Okay, so we've got quite a bit to unpack there. So just going to go back to one of the obviously trauma surgeon, vascular surgeon,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
A lot of people ask themselves, what's a vascular surgeon? I think you said to me once, it's not the bones, not the organs.
It's mainly plumbing. Plumbing is mainly plumbing stuff. I don't do hearts unless I've been stabbed in it. So I'm trauma is basically emergency general surgery, and I provide surgical practice, surgical care to people who are victims of injury, and I coordinate and lead that team. And we're a surgical practitioner, so I do surgery from pretty much the ears down in acute scenarios and lead those teams. I've been doing that for a long time now. Um, and that's combined to a sort of management role within that practice and service, and also being a major trauma trainer. So I've trained generations of surgeons. Literally today, one of my previous trainers was appointed to a consultant post in Northwest London, so I'm absolutely delighted for her, which is brilliant. And one of my passions is bringing through talent, where it might be, to become clinicians in this very austere and very exacting profession. So I love training in trauma. I love practicing as a trauma and vascular surgeon, because it's hard, and it's really involving. But it means working with people, not just clinicians, but non-clinical leaders, social care teams, therapists, non-doctors, community people, to make sure that we have a holistic approach to supporting the victims of injury, and also offering better offer pre and post event. Hence my interest in sort of injury prevention as well, and the violence reduction piece that came onto it.
So, I mean, Royal London is certainly the busiest major trauma centre in London, I've been to before, but probably the busiest in the country, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, it's probably the busiest penetrating trauma in Western Europe, a conflict aside. And we've had a long tradition of delivering high quality trauma care, training, and education, as well as having an amazing research branch as well. And I think that for me, working in a community that's so affected by violence and leading that practice for a period of time has really given me the skills and humility to work in that space, and also a reason to do more than just operate, not just sewing up holes, but actually try to understand why things happen.
and the demographics around Royal London has led to you having a massive involvement around violence reduction. You mentioned somewhat modestly that you've got a national role in violence reduction, the first time that role has existed. And
Yeah,
that's because of your work.
well, I suppose so. Yeah, I think the work I do in violence reduction was driven by looking after young boys and girls who've been shot and stabbed who lived in my area, and seeing them come back. It's not a revolving door. It's just basically, you would see it in generations. It'd be brothers, sisters, siblings, friends, colleagues, who would either come and see us with injuries, either return to us, or their friends who had beef would be involved in the same situation. And it would be kids from local areas, often affected by poverty, often people of colour, and often getting a pretty shoddy deal, but outside of their clinical care. So we would look after these people. They were called these people with these injuries. They're stabbing in bed 7, and they would get their hole sewn up, and they'd be set on their way, or they get pinched. And they were regarded as bad people because they got stabbed, rather than victims of injury. And it drove me bonkers. So we tried to do something about that. And because the current systems within the NHS weren't effective in addressing the needs of that community, we had very high readmission rates, because people get involved in injury, and they would have the support in the community to navigate a better system. So we built a program, with the support of a fantastic charity called St Giles's Trust, who we built a program using their lived experience workers, and parachuted them into this very weird and a very high functioning trauma system, in the hope that they would be able to affect a change in dynamic. And it was brilliant. Those people, they're incredibly talented caseworkers, meshed seamlessly with our program, and more importantly, meshed with the needs of the young people and their families in that space, and allowed them to navigate the system in hospital and out of it as well. And because they provided ongoing support in the community to navigate the hard bits of actually life change, is shining a mirror to your life and seeing what you could do differently, and more importantly, making that real, we found that those young people actually changed their lives, didn't come back to hospital, got back into education, back into training, back into employment, found their own voices, and readmission rates plummeted, 35% to 1%. I know it's a bonkers number. First initial results down to 1%, running around about 8% all causes now. But it's still, class-leading, world-leading results in terms of readmission rates for our violence reduction programs. And that led to bigger programs in London, bigger programs in the system, and then me leading work in London initially, and then getting a call to do the same sort of thing in nationally where I've been for the past 3.5 years. And it's been a really interesting transition from running a small program in the hospital to being asked to answer questions in Parliament and for ministers around how we set national strategy for reducing violence, not just within the NHS, but speak for as a stakeholder in other bodies, including Greater London and the government. So yeah, bit of a jump.
What I'm really interested in is because you meet the those that are victims of knife crime, but they are also often the perpetrator. There's a sort of this vicious cycle, and what you've managed to do is to say, right, well, let's go out into society and try and prevent this from happening in the first place. And you've done that through St Giles's Trust and the funding you're able to get. Now, I live probably 800 metres or so here in East Croydon from where Eliane Anden was sadly killed. What lessons can you share, do you think, with your engagement with so many young people? You describe them, I think quite rightly so. We often think these are, young hoodlums. They're not. You describe them as being energised but rumbleised, I think is the quote I heard you use once.
It's maddening, isn't it? Maddening that we regard people by the nature of their injury and define them. We stigmatise them by because you get hit by a car, you're a victim of a car accident. You get stabbed, it's probably your fault. Your parents are rubbish, and you've got no future. You don't deserve support because it was your fault, and that's just completely bonkers. But you're absolutely right. In the context of interpersonal violence, in terms of knife injury, often you're going to find individuals who have had weapons used on them before, and will use them again. We might use them in other scenarios. So yes, people who are stabbed in one day might stab somebody else another day. You might well find an individual stab somebody because they're being threatened by themselves, and there's a bit of a circular argument going over time and distance, over ongoing beef or long-standing issues in that community or that group. That doesn't make that person a bad person. It makes it a bad situation. And someone's made the least bad choice in that space. Right. And it's our responsibility, collective responsibility to make that right. So you treat the injuries. Number one, don't die. Number two, don't be maimed by that. Number three, can we heal you physically and emotionally from your injury? And can we understand what happened to you and how you got here in the first place? And let's be supportive, let's be collaborative, let's be kind, and let's see what you actually need. Let's hear your voice and see where it takes you. Because why can't we use a negative event as a positive stimulus for improvement? Why can't we say, okay, you're in a really bad place right now. You're very, very ill. You may well get pinched afterwards. However, why can't we find out why this happened and make things better in the future? People we work with in the community, out of the community, in our systems, may well have had histories about personal violence. They have what we call lived experience. I call it experience. Yeah, they may have the experience of the criminal justice system, the care system, of previous injury, and that gives you a certain narrative. Okay, but we can use those skills and that reflection to provide a holistic support to that individual. It can't just be me telling you what to do, because that's not. I'm an old man who lives in a big hospital with a helicopter. That's not necessarily real. But people who will walk with you and listen to you and challenge you are here to support you. And they're working primarily for you, not for another agenda. The landlord doesn't mean I'm after money. I'm here to make sure you have the best life you possibly can be. And it isn't just about treating your injuries, it's about moving things forward. Now, what happened close to you was an absolute tragedy. But it's not just about the standard narrative we get sold about it being boys in gangs and drugs.
One of the really tragic things here was that, and it shows it's not just about boys and gangs. Eliane was an unfortunate bystander. It's not just boys and gangs. Others get caught up in this as well, which is so tragic. It really is really, really tragic.
Think about trauma, Trevor. You can live your life perfectly. Right, you can be riding your bicycle perfectly with high vis and a nice helmet on a bright sunny day. A bus turns left and you're gone. And you don't blame that person being hit by a bus. You don't, but you be the one with being stabbed. You're in the wrong place at the wrong time, aren't you? Wrong place, wrong time. That individual is a victim of toxic masculinity, That's a victim of a person, of an individual who was empowered both physically and emotionally to weaponize those thoughts. Okay, well, never challenged, never coordinated, never pushed back against, and facilitated. Because everybody who could have said to that young person, "This is not the way. It's not how people behave in this society," was allowed to just get on with it. And we're asleep at the wheel. We're asleep at the wheel.
Well, one of the things I'll be really interested in, because I'm a trauma lawyer, so I sit down with bereaved families or those that are really struggling to deal with their life changing injuries, and it's traumatic. I've had a privilege to be able to give that support, but it's traumatic. But for you, you're right there, the immediate person there trying to save their life. Now, I find it quite traumatic. I've had to sort of develop this inbuilt resilience so it doesn't affect me personally. How do you deal with it?
Well, the truth of the matter is, I don't always deal with it. I think I'm only human. When I see somebody, every so often there's an individual that story or their injuries just affect you, and you have to go into a quiet place to think about it. However, I'm protected by lots of things. I've been incredibly well trained through my career as a healthcare professional. I've got a really solid family behind me and a great support network in terms of friends. My professional colleagues are brilliant, and we make time for each other and ourselves, and we have good support networks for our emotional well-being. But also, I'm a human being, and I'm from this area. I'm from this lifestyle. I recognise narratives around it. That doesn't make it an excuse, but I get it. Okay, and I care about these individuals as well as caring for them. So I know if this young person has a significant injury, I will do my best to support them. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely, will do my best to support them, and I will not let that. I think it's really sad.
Achieving that great good is almost part of the healing process, isn't it? The outcomes you can achieve
I think
by
it's
giving back.
totally the most important thing about it. The thing about when you're involved in the moment, in a critical moment, you're providing leadership and practice. That's what you do, and you're almost an autopilot. Yeah. The moments you sort of like come out of your body and you're looking down at what's happening, at this young boy fighting for their life, whilst you're cutting holes in them and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And afterwards, in that quiet time, you're talking to the family and trying to explain to them what's happened, where their beautiful boy is now a big lump, in an intensive care bed, or sadly sometimes dead. That's a really hard place to be. And seeing how that lands with families is very instructive. Now, for me, I have to know that young person died despite rather than because of me and the system that I'm part of. So we have to make sure that our practice is as good as it can be, our practice is as good as they can be, and our prevention is as good as it can be. So that individual should not have been there, should not have been harmed, should have been there to minimise that risk. And that's what I'm driven by, but also what I'm comforted by. So if we've done our best and we can't fix it, that's what happens. We are very good at what we do. We're sadly very well practiced at it as well. And I know that should a person under our care pass, it's not because of something we've missed. It's because those injuries were life ending.
Yeah, well, you said before, admission rates tumbled as a result of your initiative. So, congratulations to you on that, Martin. I know there's a lot more to be done, but if we all do our little bit, we can have an impact.
I think you're right, Trevor. The thing about it was interesting because I thought about it as on some sort of evangelical crusade, yeah. But the thing about these sort of things is that when you start sharing the message, people buy into because people always think the same thing. They want the best for these young boys and girls. They don't want to see these people coming back. These people coming back to us again. We want this to go away. And even people who are not connected to the issue directly feel that pain in that family and that community. So when we show people a better option that works, people engage in it, and it resulted not just in better readmission rate, but also a different change in culture. We started taking interest in those young boys and girls in the beds. We started having those proper conversations. We started saying, you know what, actually, tell me your name, where you're from, what you're interested in. Are you a gooner? Well, no one's perfect. And having proper conversations, being pragmatic about it, and war culture changes, team culture changes, conversations changes, and we become a much more diverse in terms of thought practice. People who want to work, people are now attracted to our program because we're doing violence reduction as well. Therefore, we're attracting different kinds of people into our system. which is changing how we do work, which is changing culture even more. So we're actually doing something much more significant than just doing a bit of romance work. We're actually trying to create that social engine that finds individuals of talent who have found the thing they want to be passionate about and can be developed and promote that practice and become empowered themselves in that space. And the young people, okay, are getting a chance to actually live the lives they actually want rather than they're forced to have, which I think is a really important thing.
Two of the other many hats that you wear, one of which you didn't mention, so I'm going to mention it. But one of them you did mention, which is the deputy lieutenant,
Yeah, yeah.
which I think believes you can take sheep over one of the bridges, isn't it? But
Oh,
more
that's a
serious,
different thing altogether. But yeah.
you're a free man.
I'm a from the city of London, yes, and that's a sheep thing, and that's something that came from me working in and around the city. Weirdly enough, I'm from South East London. You can probably tell by the accent, but I work in Central London. I trained at Bart, just actually around the corner from it's actually in the city of London. And over my work, charitable work, I was approached by livery companies, and I became a freeman of a company, and now freeman of the city of London, and that allows me to do the sheep thing. But more importantly, it allows me to work with the City of London, which is a really powerful financial engine to support the communities of London. And part of the work we do in the City of London is actually to recognise that we have a huge responsibility to our communities that we are part of and serve, to ensure the best for people, particularly young people, in this really powerful financial capital. So that's the one thing of it. The tenancy thing is another another weird gig that I've got. So I work with for the Greater London Lieutenancy, for Lord Lieutenant Sir Ken Lisa, and that role is about supporting the activity of the monarch within the London area, and that's part about the honour system, partly about visits, partly about making sure that the charitable arm of the society is coordinated, and we work with faith, we work with community, we work with activists, we work with anybody who works to understand how we can support those activities. And we are very proud what we can do to ensure that those groups that are so powerful in the community are supported and funded and recognised for our activities. So for me, as a Londoner, it's about recognising that we can bring that to the fore as well. So there are bits of London that are great. The history of London is fantastic. Traditions of London are fantastic, and they need to be celebrated and shared with the communities in a way that supports them. So, from my perspective, one of the things I do in these slightly odd roles is allow us to be a bridge between the history of London and the city and what it stands for in its best circumstances, and making that into activity now to ensure that young people in London now know that the City of London is on their side and will help them progress to be the people that they want to be. And for me, I think it's a no-brainer, really. It's a no-brainer.
You mentioned at the start of that the monarchy, so I just because that's the other hat you didn't mention. So recently, I was privileged to receive the Senior Leaders Award at the Black Talent Awards in Birmingham, Edgbaston, and I felt really proud. And one of the things I did, I took my mum with me, my 86-year-old mum, to the award ceremony, and it was her first ever black tie event, and a really special moment with her. But you outdid me because you took your mum, Norma,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Buckingham Palace because you are a commander of the British Empire, which you didn't mention amongst all those hats. So tell us about that experience.
Lot of hats, lot of hats. Yeah, so I thought it was a scam. Actually, I got the email, and I have to admit, if you click this link for this, and I thought it was more about winning golden pocket money in the bank account. But yes, it was true, and I'm a commander of the most excellent order of the British Empire. And the words are a bit conflicting, aren't they? I don't command anything. Yeah, I'm not very excellent at anything. I am British, very proud of being British, very proud of being a Black Britain, very proud of being Jamaican Black
You're a
Britain.
commander of black excellence. That's what it should stand for, Martin.
And the empire, the dark empire. I work in a hospital, but nothing more than that. And I think for me, I know that the terms are problematic for lots of people, and I did think about it myself about whether or not I should acknowledge and accept the award when I was offered it to me. And I thought to myself, you know what? This is a really big thing, not just for me, but for the work that I've been doing for such a long time in the communities I've been working with and serving for a period of time. And if it's such that's going to be recognised and celebrated, that's a really good thing. And I think for me that if we're going to showcase what this country can do for people who have endeavour, okay, and they can be recognised and rewarded in a way that is, internationally renowned. Who am I to say no to that? My mum put a shift in. She worked as a healthcare assistant. She worked three jobs, to put me and my sister through school. My sister's done really well in her career. I've done all right in mine. I'm not gonna share a disservice by not accepting one of the most significant awards you can get in this country for working in the charitable sector. And I think that for me is really important. And for her, having put in, X years chugging away in Southeast London, working at King's and putting us all those privations, all those slights, all of those bits that she had to endure just to put us through school. I think for her, she recognised that as a really positive thing. And for me, when I'm trying to say to my mum, I've done you proud. I've listened to what you said. All those days, all those nights, all those time on the knee, you spent on your knees praying for me and my sister's well-being. Everything you gave up to show me what good could look like. All that counsel, all that support, all that forgiveness. It did count for something. And this is for us, not just for me.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I'm driven and motivated and inspired to do what I do on the basis that I really try and make my parents proud. My dad's Windrush generation, 85, mum, Windrush generation, 86. And, if I can make them proud, I know I'm on the right track. And I think you're absolutely right. Norma was undoubtedly incredibly proud. Can I take you to the bottom rung? So this is where it all started. What instilled that mindset? Now I know your mum worked for the NHS, and you were brought up with your sister,
Yes,
and you went to a regular school. I think it's fair to say
pretty
that some
regular
people
school.
that had that regular school
Yeah.
probably ended up doing irregularly bad things. So it wasn't a school of privilege by any stretch. So can you just
No.
take us through the school life?
So interesting being the nerdy kid with a briefcase, isn't it? I So I'm not by nature, I'm not a shrinking violet, but school was interesting for me. I went to local schools. I mean, I was very fortunate, and this is very important about this entire podcast, and narrative is very important. The first person I remember in my primary school education was my teacher Basil Morgan, black British school teacher in my second year at primary school. Big fro, very black, very British, very much himself, and very comfortable in his proficiency. Excellent, yeah. And at the age of 6, I saw a man who was knocking it out of the park as a teacher, who everybody loved, who was great at his job, who was who was as proud to be a black man as I ever had been, and did it brilliantly. And I didn't recognise it at the time. I thought it was just, it's Mr. Morgan. I didn't realise how he was basically like a rocking horse. He was incredibly rare, a unicorn of teachers. And for me, instilling that expectation early in my life meant that I wasn't fearful of actually trying harder, and I've always thanked Baz for what he did, though I didn't have a chance to say it to his face before he passed, sadly. But for him, he's always been an inspiration to me because he was just there, just doing the thing, just doing the job.
That's incredible. It just shows the importance of having diverse teachers. I never experienced having a black teacher, or in fact, any teacher I can think of really of any ethnicity. I always felt through my school years that I didn't have a chance. It was never going to be good enough. So it's really interesting that he would have got you, and he would have had your.
He was just really keen to say, because you've got a good reading age, Mark, you've got a really good mum, you're trying really hard, you're a good lad. I know you get into trouble at school. I know you're quite chatty. You're a bit naughty, but actually you're a good kid. And when it came to me going to secondary school, because I couldn't get into the grammar school because I didn't fit the demographic, I don't think. I didn't pass the interview. He said to my mum, go to my old school. It's not a great school, but they will look after the mum because they get kids like me and him. And he was absolutely right. The school now closed down. Never shone as an academic institution, okay, but they did spend time on me. They let me explore myself, let me give my lessons, let me get me a bit of time. And the school was punchy. More kids in my school went to prison, went to university. It wasn't a great place, and we were lucky. We had some great sports stars in there. Remember David Rocastle? Played
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Arsenal,
yeah.
played for England. He
Yeah.
was in the year below me. Brilliant kid, but by no means the most talented person in his class, let alone in the school at football. But the most coachable. Yeah, but the most coachable. And the amount of talent that was thrown away in that community because it wouldn't engage, it wouldn't engage, wouldn't engage, wouldn't engage.
It's an incredible
You
way of
know,
putting it, isn't it? The most coachable. You know, the desire we have, the appetite we have to learn. We want to be improved. We want to learn, and that's obviously the appetite you had was to be the best you could be, guided by
yeah,
your teaching. Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I mean, for me at the time, my only real motivation was to get out of Lewisham because there were too many people getting stabbed. It was just too desperate. I didn't want to be like my family members and like my people I lived with in the corner who were just living hand to mouth. I didn't want to be a hustler. I didn't see the need to spend my entire life just looking over my shoulder for what I had and having it been under threat all the time. I wanted to actually to own something that I could own my own success, and I didn't want to. And I didn't want to be. Same with the parents I meet, even now, their first statements to me about their kids are that he's not in a gang, he hasn't been to prison. And I said to myself, what kind of expectation are you setting for your child if that's what you're saying as your opening gambit to you? That boy, that girl could be a superstar, astronaut, could be anything they want to be, but you can't start off by setting expectations that low about them. If that's what you're broadcasting about your own children, what are you saying to them at home about their level of aspiration? And I think, for me, I had low aspirations when I was young. I wanted to be an aircraft mechanic and get out of Lewisham, but it wasn't until the exams came through that I had to stick with it. And my mum said to me, "Look, you've got to give this a go." My teacher said, "You've got to give this a go." I didn't think I was ever going to go to uni or going to be, medicine wasn't on my radar until the very last part of it. I just applied probably just to satisfy aspirations for my mum and for my teachers rather than for me. And that probably explains why I found medical school so difficult because it was quite a challenging environment going from a 30% black sixth form centre in Grafton Park to going to a medical school. I've been going for it's now 100 years. I was the only white person, only black person there was a student. It's actually quite funny, actually, yeah, because there were no black students in my year at medical school. My old man, God rest him, drove us up in these Austin Allegro. Yeah, I mean, my first day at medical school,
Yeah.
go up there,
Austin
go into,
Allegro.
you drive into College Hall in Charterhouse Square, don't worry the Barbican, okay? You go into this. They shoot Poirot outside of the frontispiece there, so it's quite posh. You go into this gated area, and they're playing croquet on the lawn, okay? There, and all these kids playing croquet. There's a library, there's a quad, there's squash courts. All these kids. There are children. There are kids driving their own cars. All right, and this is like this is the eight. How can you afford your own car? Kids eating kids eating this and that, and they're eating foie gras and donkeys and all sorts. I'm sitting there, with a packet of broken biscuits and some processed cheese, going, what the heck's going on? I might as well have been on the moon. All right. So it was a complete about face for me. It's like a different, and to be fair, it wasn't always great. I mean, if you go back to the 80s, there's a lot of casual racism, a lot of casual sexism, a lot of bias in there, a lot of untamed talk. It wouldn't happen now, yeah. But I was quite a robust kid, having grown up in Southeast London. I was used to being jumped by people who didn't think very much of me, and that was my mindset.
It's funny, isn't it? It's funny though that back then I was used to being chased down the road by skinnies. I was
Yeah,
used to being called names. I was used to not fitting in, being the only black kid
yeah.
in the
First to the
class.
only, first to the only, always first to the
Yeah,
only, always first to the only. Yeah, I remember. So I used to come out of New Cross Gate Tube Station when Mill were at home. Yeah, and the door would say, "Just run, run." If I didn't run, they'd get me. And I'd run up Tanner's Hill up towards Brocken towards my mum's. That would be a normal thing every other week. That
yeah,
would be what
yeah.
I expect to happen. So I didn't think. I thought the sort of mindless barb from public school boys is nothing compared to the big. Actually, someone throwing me for the bicycle chain. It's no big deal. And med school was hilarious. I mean, I had a brilliant time there. I mean, I was quite good. I played a bit of sport, and but I found it academically quite challenging because I didn't really know how to play the game, which is really bizarre.
I don't think you like me. We've remained ourselves, our authentic selves. Right? So if you're in that environment, how is it? You said something earlier on which made me laugh actually, because I remember when I first similar experience when I was at law school, and when I got my first job, I felt I needed to try and change. And the reason why I laughed is because you mentioned briefcase. And I went out and I bought my first briefcase. I felt that that's what lawyers look like. So how have
Yeah.
you managed to, to remain your authentic self?
I think you haven't really got a choice. I mean, I think you can put on whatever you like, yeah. But when the pressure's on, you are yourself. Okay, so you can't be anything other than who you really are. And don't get me wrong, I've tried. I've tried to fit in, okay, and tried to hide, and tried to be as take the bass out of my voice and be a little bit more, a bit more gentrified, sound like Prince Charles, yeah. But actually, at the end of the day, you
King of,
can't hide it. If you're a 6 foot tall, 18 and a half stone rugby player, you're not going to hide anywhere. Yeah. You just got to
yeah,
be who you are. So let's just go with it. And actually, you've just got to play your cards as they are. And as you go through life, okay, you want to be something else. You want to be this. You want to be shinier and smarter and taller and thinner and ever and you want to be more white in some places and more black in other places, and because you don't fit in here, don't fit in there. The bottom line is you are who you are, and
yeah,
you're the amalgamation of your lived experiences, your background, your aspirations, and your talent, and you owe it to your talent to live to fulfill that. Yeah. So if you can't, if you're spending a lot of my time when I reflect on why I struggled in medical school initially, because I was trying to be so many things at the same time. I spent most of my bandwidth was would fill up with me trying to fit into a room. Do I talk like this or talk like that? Do I sound like this? Do I wear that? Can I say this? Can I say that? And I got so confused I could say nothing in the end. And I lost years of my life and years of and countless time trying to be who I wasn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can really
And it,
relate to that.
and it's just a matter of accepting that you are who you are, and you know what you say and the way you say it is perfect for you, not anybody else, but perfect for you. And how I'm not very good at articulating myself, but I use my hands. I talk with my hands quite a lot because I'm not very good at. I had to stutter when I was younger. I had a bit of a stutter, and I wasn't very good at finding words, and so I used a lot of hand stuff, and I was a little bit spectrumy, had very poor eye contact, so I had to learn how to be neuronormative because I was actually pretty spectrumy as a kid, and I think that helped me to articulate in other ways. And I use a lot of metaphor because I can't find the word sometimes. But I think that once you accept who you are and recognize that your backstory is your strength, it's your superpower.
Yeah,
My diversity is my superpower. I have got experiences. I've got time in service. I have seen and done things these people never see. Right, and I understand the
yeah.
world in a different way, and I have different solutions, which are entirely valid, okay, and actually appropriate, more appropriate than that's in there present, and that allows me to take that positive, to be brave, okay, because failure is what I was. If I just stand still, I'll still fail. So why not just have a go, see what happens?
I've said that I've spent the first half of my life conscious that I was black, the second half celebrating it.
Yeah.
I
Well, I
was
don't think.
really,
I don't know. I mean, I don't think. I mean, do I celebrate being black? Do I celebrate being tall? I don't really celebrate being fat. I think it's just who I am, and I think that I always struggle with a little bit about with praise and this sort of reflected glory because I'm just doing what I think I should be doing. You know, I've got great faith in people. I want to do things the right way. I want to make sure that all my I's are dotted and T's are crossed, which might make me a little bit slower to get to progress. But I absolutely know that everything I've got, I've earned, not been given. And for me, because of my sort of very working class background, earning stuff rather than being gifted it's very important to me. Yeah.
yeah,
Don't get me wrong. I've got a huge amount of privilege now. Yeah, because I've got all these hats and titles, but that stuff's been earned through
yeah.
long, hard practice, through lots and lots of failure and reflection. Okay, and making sure because people didn't want to give me a go all the time. Lots of people were very positive about me and wanting to support me, but as a bit of a risk. Yeah, and some people actively didn't want to take that risk and didn't want to have that person in that room because it was a change of culture. It wasn't comfortable, and I get that.
Did you think? Do you think you were helped with your mindset because your mum was quite strict, wasn't she? So she Get me on the straight and narrow.
I can still feel I still my head's still down and walk into the room just in case. The front room on the Sunday, the front room is still not happening. So yeah, and I think that there's something to be said for structure, yeah, and boundaries, yeah. Thinking of kids who can be easily swayed by circumstances, yeah. But I think it's about consistency, yeah. I knew my mum was reliably going to be there, but what she was doing, I know what we were going to do. I know we could be, and then she always had my back, yeah. And I think that for me, you can dismiss parental activity if you want to, but whatever that parental system looks like, maybe one parent, two parents, four parents, no parents, it needs to be consistent. It needs to be loving, yeah. It needs to be forgiving because kids make mistakes all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
When you're picking up rubbish after the night, or broken crockery, or apologising to someone for breaking the window, that's what parental stuff doing. Parental love isn't about gifts and nice holidays and praise. It's about forgiveness. It's about being there. It's about being absolutely there, and about having that kid's back. Whenever stuff's down, when anybody else turned their back on me in my life, when everybody else had no time for me, whenever I had an issue, I would go home. Mum would say, "It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right,"
yeah,
and she was right. She was right, because don't get me wrong, I've done incredibly well career wise, not in quick time, not rapidly. It's taken longer than perhaps it could have done, and I'm not embittered by that. This is very important because the journey was very enriching. The journey was very empowering, and I know that everything I've got, I've had to work for. So there's nothing in my mind that you think that I got here because I was lucky. It wasn't given to me for reasons. And I think for me, because I've got this a bit of a working class hangout, a bit of an imposter thing going on. I need to make sure that the internal and external markers are all there for me, so I can make sure I can move forward. But it comes from that very, very solid parental background I have there, and it isn't a traditional two parent family. It's very much what a lot of people I see and I work with see, but it was actually very, very consistent and very supported by a large community of other women in South East London who would keep an eye out for me and keep my ear on if I've been naughty as well.
yeah. There's something when I think of your mum, I think very much of sort of Mary Seacole. So, a strong, strong woman who determined, giving, caring, compassionate. You know, really was able to overcome whatever the challenges were thrown at her. Your mum did her 3 jobs. Resilient. But actually, what she's channeled into you is this determination just to do the best you can
Yeah,
and to care. Can I just take you to the middle of the ladder?
yeah,
So these are the obstacles and challenges because um, what you talked about there was a sort of the external and internal frameworks that give you support, particularly internally. So how you are as a person, external, your family. Yet you've been working in an environment, and I'm touching on COVID here, in an environment in which you became actually one of the faces of COVID. So you see on TV all the time talking about it. And that was actually quite important. Important because there were a disproportionate number of people from our community that didn't want to take up the vaccine. But
yeah,
also there were a disproportionate number of people, NHS staff, that were actually suffering at the hands of COVID, whether it be because of lack of PPE or whatever else. How has it been you working in that environment, in that framework, where you could see the disproportionate impact on our community?
yeah. It's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, 'cause I think healthcare workers are disproportionately, they're overrepresented in terms of demographics around people of colour, and they were in the most hard pressed areas, most likely areas to get COVID, and they did badly. And I think that the issue around vaccine hesitancy, as it was labelled, okay, isn't that? It's healthcare hesitancy because people quite rightly were surprised that they hadn't been ignored for decades. They'd been told to do stuff, and they were being pilloried for not engaging in a process they knew nothing about. And where we learned a very good lesson as healthcare providers was to actually have that conversation, to go out to community, to understand the nature of your concern, and to explain it. All right, and to be humble and to be transparent and to say and to be honest. I know this bit. don't know that bit, you know. And as when I was working in the hospital, I became a vaccinator. So I could see, I was quite fortunate. I knew one of the people who developed the Oxford vaccine. And I touched base with him and his team, and also I knew, and I read the literature, and I knew where we were with it, and I could see the only way out of this. You know what it was like in lockdown, and in lockdown two, I thought we were going to lose the country at one point, and there was nowhere to go. And I think that I could see how this could play out badly, and I could see that we were not getting the messaging right. So I started vaccinating, and I started talking to the healthcare support workers. I started talking to who I was vaccinating and said, "What's the issue?" I told myself, "I will do it for you. You can come to me about it. We'll have the conversation." And I recognised that that actually had some degree of leverage. Yeah. So when it became obvious that there's something that needs to be said, and I was asked if I'd volunteer my voice to it, I thought it was appropriate to do that, because I think it's important that we have these conversations. People quite rightly have reservations around all kinds of authority, and which healthcare is one of them. The NHS is seen as a big, uncaring beast. And I think that we have to be humble enough to get on to the ground and have those conversations. Now, I'm not saying we convince anybody that the vaccination made sense. I'm not convinced we're ever going to convince anybody in that situation, but I do believe that it was safe. I do believe it had a huge effect. I do believe it was done very well in that regard. So it was dealt out and given out appropriately. Compare it to other parts of the world, much more conflicted. But for me, the learning from COVID was a bit more about what you do in public health, about being that person who's prepared to advocate and act as a bridge between the science and medicine and the community that need that support, to share the messaging, to understand the challenges around it, and to navigate that space. I want people to engage in their own healthcare, to own their own healthcare, to use the healthcare system as to advocate and support their practice, be able to voice your concerns, voice your dissent, navigate your system, control your own care, to work on wellness rather than illness.
Yeah,
So you keep yourself well. What's valid for COVID is valid for diabetes and hypertension. Yeah. And
yeah,
if you don't
yeah,
engage in those processes, you end up with strokes and heart attacks, don't you? Yeah.
yeah,
And it leaves you in
yeah.
toes and
The
feet.
confidence is an important thing. Confidence and
Yeah,
trust is an important thing. You talk about the number of black men in particular that suffer from prostate cancer. It's real, and so we've got to be taking care of ourselves.
yeah,
Having someone like you in your position, I think, really helps that, because there are these labels, a vaccine hesitancy, misinformation. So things like Tuskegee will be dismissed as if they never happened. And you get people like the French doctor who spoke around testing of the vaccine in Africa. So it all gets a bit mixed up, but then you can see more clearly if you've got somebody like you presenting the reality of why this is important.
and you're right. And there is a bit around being a safe pair of hands and being a reason. Because my credibility doesn't come from my knowledge of the COVID vaccine. My credibility comes from being plugging away for 30 years in the NHS as a clinician and doing the right thing for the community I serve. And I think one of the things we don't really talk about as being black leaders is the visibility piece around it. Because
Yeah,
although I see myself as dad and an MG at work, and Martin to you, people see me as some figure, some face on the website, yeah, and make assumptions about me that aren't necessarily correct.
yeah,
And I'm required to be a spokesperson for my ethnicity rather than just to be the person that I am. And, I,
yeah,
and I'm not. I'm not a standard bloke. I'm a bit weird. I get that, yeah. But I represent what I hope is a transparent version of myself. Okay, and I'm not perfect by any means, but I am a very proud black person, a very proud Jamaican, very proud British person. I'm very proud I work in the NHS. I'm very proud that I do the things that I do. I'm very proud I've been allowed to be successful in those spaces, and that's been built upon a system of education that was free at point of use, a health system that allowed me to get free at point of access. It's about me getting free school meals. It's about me living in a society that was warm and dry and good housing. It's about me being allowed to pursue my ambitions without being encumbered by issues around costing because we had no money,
yeah.
and about being allowed to progress in that career, albeit at a pace I found slow for myself, but to move forward and to attain the seniority that my talent merits.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm blessed with a firm which has allowed me to do that. But it's also recognised that me having a profile isn't me showing off. Actually, what it's doing it's encouraging and inspiring other people. But in terms of the framework in which you work, Martin, I mean, it may seem controversial, but that it is still a struggle for people to break through to, band 7, band 8, within the NHS if you're a person of colour.
If I told you how much time goes into the conversations about trying to break barriers and make the diverse and la la la, and nothing seems to change, not rapidly, yeah. And there's initiative after initiative, piece after piece, and it doesn't seem to attract individuals because the culture isn't quite right in any organisation. People who I know have got talent who work in healthcare, work in other organisations because they feel welcome there, they feel supported, they feel heard there. And we need to understand that our organisations need to change to be welcoming to everybody. It's, I can talk very emphatically about my ethnicity, yeah, because I know what that looks like to feel closed down, shut down, unheard in those spaces. But I do know that when we've moved into the space and I've been in that place, we've been able to demonstrate proficiency competence, to be myself in those spaces and still be hugely effective, and to support the development of other individuals from diverse backgrounds into roles where they can develop and show their true strengths as well. And I think that it's not just about being in that person, not just be there and getting up to a level and pulling the ladder up. Look at me, I'm
Yeah,
fine. It's about saying my responsibility is to make sure that everybody who sees me from a distance can meet me if they want to. Everybody wants to.
yeah,
If you want to be work experience in London, give me a shout. We'll try something out for you. We'll get you up there. If you're good enough, we'll get you in. And if you're not, we'll find something else for you. And it's about can I identify individuals, irrespective of demographics, who've got talent who I can support. And my job is not to be selective and saying you've got to be this or that, the other. But you've got talent, I can help you. Let's move that forward. And I'll look at everybody rather than just some people. And I think that my desire is to create that engine that gets people into that system, do what they want to do. We've had great success in supporting people from all kinds of backgrounds to become healthcare professionals and do really good work. And I think it's one of the absolute responsibilities of leaders
yeah,
to lead and develop. If you're going to be in this role, it isn't just about doing the work because a cat could do my job pretty much, but about actually
I,
doing the bit
I
that matters. The bit that really matters to me is that can you inspire people to train in that practice? Can you inspire them to be themselves in that practice? Be themselves in that practice without being somebody else. Can they shortcut the years I had of trying to fit in just by being themselves? And can we create those leaders who are authentic, who are correct, who do what they want to say, and actually are being the people they need to be? Because from my perspective, okay, the thing I despise most in people who they lose themselves in the roles and they're
yeah,
embittered by it. The journey's embittered them and they lose
yeah,
sight of who they are. They become some sort of weird amalgam of sound bites and nonsense. They have no core. And I don't think the NHS deserves that. I don't think any health service deserves. I don't think anybody deserves that as a practitioner or any kind of endeavour. We should be who we are, okay. And you can't hollow yourself out just to be successful.
yeah,
You've got to maintain your
yeah.
core
You need
values.
a positive.
And if you lose that, if you lose your sense of self, you're nobody.
So you mentioned before that you've got two boys, Marcus and Antonio, and I've
Yeah,
got two boys, Ria Rocco, and I've got a daughter called Kia. And you also mentioned that you adopted.
yeah.
Now this is really close to my heart because I adopted my daughter, and the reason why it's close to my heart is because there are a disproportionate number of kids from ethnic minority backgrounds that are
Hmm.
in care in homes. So for me, it was a really important thing to do. How have you found? This is really for those that might be thinking about adopting, because we do need more people to come forward and adopt. How have you found the experience as a whole?
It's funny, isn't it? My sons are the best thing. I absolutely love them. They might love me back. I'm not sure about that just yet. With,
Sure.
with all the things I've done in my life that give me pride, I'm proud of my sons for the young men they are going to become, and they are brilliant kids. They're not straightforward, but neither is their dad. You know, and the process of adoption in the UK is protracted and intrusive and frustrating and overly long. And yet, at the end of it, I've got a son. You
Yeah.
know, and it's a privilege to see those boys grow up. It's a privilege to be their dad and to be their supporter and to be their custodian.
How
Yeah,
old were they at the age of adoption?
3, so quite old in the adoption thing. I think everybody wants to get a baby, and we got toddlers, and I think that was made it slightly easier. And because they're dual heritage kids, they fall into the biggest lump of kids who aren't necessarily
Yeah.
who are up for adoption, left in the care of a secure estate. And I think, from my perspective, I think, I find it very sad that all these kids have such trickling life. But I don't want to frame it in terms of it being pity, or any of those sort of things. It's an absolute joy. My partner and I decided to become parents, but we couldn't do it a certain way. But I grew up in a West Indian background where we brought up everybody. We didn't where you who your parents were, your blood was didn't really matter. You grew up in the family.
Yeah.
I had so many kids
None
in
of
my
my
family
parents.
who were. My mum was auntie to everybody, and vice versa. I'd eat at everybody's house. I got so fat probably, but and so it wasn't really a feature for me about being about blood. It was about being family. So having the boys and the boys as our kids was the most natural thing in the world for me. And I think that I recognise adoption is difficult. I know for a lot of people they find it difficult because it's another authority piece. There's a lot of judgment around it about your financials and your backstory, and they ask lots of really
Yeah.
intrusive questions that aren't very comfortable. And it's quite a challenging time for you if you're in a relationship to go through all the backstory and play that all stuff
Yeah.
out. And there's lots of interviews and lots of thresholding that you don't need to do to be able to be a biological parent. You haven't got to do anything. You just got to turn up, and there you are. And there's a baby. But for me, I've got to do a fire check. Here's a fire check on my house. You've got
Yeah.
a fire check on your house. And then certificates and this and GCSEs and that and income and whatever. Just where none
Yeah.
of that's valid for anything else. And at some point you think to yourself, why am I doing this to myself? I've got
Yeah.
I've got a perfectly good life, everything's going fine, and I've been plugging away at this for 2 years, and no line of no victory in sight. And then there you go,
Suddenly.
there you go.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I had 2 birth children, and so the attitude towards me was, well, why are you doing this? Are you on a crusade? So it actually became harder
Yeah,
because I was trying to do what I thought was the right thing. Right, so, Martin, I said that, and we're going to end this with what I think is something which just is the embodiment of Martin P. Griffiths. This says it all about you, and I'm not going to pretend that I am the creator of this, because the creator was Nick Elphick. Now, you featured on Bill Bailey's portraits. I think there were 4 portraits, wasn't there? And there was another one, another piece, sculpture.
yeah,
He's a
yeah.
figurative sculpture, and if anybody hasn't watched this, they've got to watch it on iPlayer. Bill Bailey, Nick Elphick, and Martin Griffiths. Now, it's incredible because it follows your journey in many ways. You talk about your journey as a surgeon. You talk about your home life and everything else. And he has somehow embodied this magically in these sculptures. So, what was that experience like? 'Cause, like you were so moved when you were looking at them. You were really, really touched. But what was that like?
It's mad, but really, really uplifting. Um, I don't know how I fell into this one. I got agreed to meet with people and ended up getting on this in this crazy program, and I met Bill Bailey, lovely man, and I met Nick.
Mm,
Nick is an absolute force of nature. He's a big bear of a
yeah,
guy, hugely engaging, hugely passionate, hugely talented, and we had some really great conversations. And the thing about that is that he took the time to find out about me, didn't just take photographs. And you can see the difference between he gets me, he understands me, and those sculptures say things about me that I can't say myself.
but he also met your mum as well, didn't he? That was an important part of
Yo,
it.
and because I think it was important that he got the backstory, because I think he didn't really. I mean, to explain, I can't explain what it was like growing up in the 60s and 70s because I was a kid. I mean, and whatever privations I've gone through in my life were nothing to what our parents went through. I
Yeah,
don't want to think I don't want to think about what they did, to put food on the table. what they went through, just to shop and to live in London in those days. So to hear her share her reflections, about what life was like, what bringing me up was like, what it feels like to be my parent was important to him and important to me. 'Cause I hadn't really heard that myself either. It's quite interesting that we hadn't had those things you don't talk about, in my family. You don't talk about, pride and that kind of stuff. It's not the sort of thing we do. So that process was really interesting, and actually bringing the family to see it for the first time, it was a complete shock to me. I wasn't expecting it. It's a huge amount of work. It's all incredible. It's an incredible standard of work. And I brought my dear friends there, who I know and I trust, and people I'm very connected to, and
I must have been
they
busy.
and and they got it. They got it as well, and they got it. And they saw it for what it was, and they said, "Yeah, it's spot on." And I was very moved because I'm not a person who likes to crow about what I've done. I've got a long list of boxes I've ticked, but it's never been done in the service of me. It's all been done in the service of others, and my best work has always been done in the development of other people. It's never been for or about me. I don't think that's the way I'm built, and I hope that those artworks show not the me, but the process, but the willingness to engage, the willingness to succeed, the willingness to share, the willingness to encourage and inspire and to challenge. That's what I want people to take from that. Not the face, not the eyes, not the hands, but there's somebody who actually cares enough about things to make a difference, and do that by supporting people and practices to make that life and that society fairer and more achievable.
Some people sadly choose to put a knife in their hands.
Yeah.
What you've demonstrated and what the portraits demonstrate is the power of putting a scalpel in your hand. What you've done, and I watched it, and I actually watched it again. I watched it twice. And I didn't watch it in readiness for this. I watched it twice because it moved me so much. It was the connection between you and what you do on a daily basis. I'm not going to call it a job because it's not. It's almost a calling, isn't it? The connection with your mother and family, and the way you've just climbed this ladder without looking down for fear of falling, but because you know what's on the next rung is so important. And then having got there, the way you've just been the ladder. I mean, you're the epitome, I think, of what all of those involved with Windrush had hoped for. And I'm really, really proud to know you and call you a friend, Martin. So thank you for today. Thank you for being the ladder.
No, too kind, mate. Such lovely words, but they're not. Other words, never about me, my friend. Always about what we can do. And I think, the thing to take away is that everybody has the power to make changes, yeah? But it's about you looking towards people who may not look or sound like you and saying, like, how can I help? And the thing that's been most powerful to me in my life, people who helped me, not because I had an agenda, because they could.
Yeah. If with fair opportunity and the right mindset, you can make a difference.
100%. 100%. Beautifully said.
Thank you for joining us for the You Triumph podcast. I've been your host, Trevor Sterling, and this has been a journey of triumphs and the mindset that makes them possible. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and leave a review. Your support helps others discover the show and the valuable insights shared. Join us next time as we continue to unravel the stories and strategies for succeeding in life. Remember, you triumph if you believe, and if you've achieved, one must not aspire simply to climb the ladder, but to be the ladder.